everybody kind of get their snacks, and while we're at it, we're going to thank, I believe it was Stacy and Rhonda, am I right?
Yep.
With that, so thank you all very much for those snacks. I'm pretty sure that I know everybody here. If I do not, I am Sherry Rose. I'm the president of League of Women Voters of Kent. So happy to have all of you here. Before we begin on everything, I do want, so I did thank Stacy and Rhonda. I also wanted to thank all of you that were at the rally on Saturday for the Vote No rally. If you were there, you know that there was a little excitement. There was actually a big protester there. And so that was a little excitement. And thank you to all of you too that were at the Honkin' Waves that we had. We had 6 of them across the county. So that was, it was super fun. We only counted on Friday afternoon, we only got 9 middle fingers. So I figured that was like a bonus. And I'm like, oh, you know, issue 1, that's right, that's exactly what it is. So I figured that was a bonus to us as well. But there was a lot of support out there. I love the truckers because, of course, AFL-CIO and the Teamsters are all on board with Vote No, so it was always good to have them do the through Streetsboro as well. So thank you to all of you. So going into this discussion, as well as going into 2024, many of you are aware, and you were on, several of you received an email talking about gathering signatures already. So just as we're coming off one campaign, we're going straight into another, and we knew that this would be the case. We have been fortunate enough to be in the Maureen O'Connor camp. So the ballot language that is coming out is bipartisan, and it is really structured with her backing and with her guidance, knowing what we would face at the Supreme Court if that were the case. So we have been extremely fortunate with that. That being said, we are not gathering signatures tomorrow because we are still, the ballot language is still, we're almost there. It's still being massaged. We knew that this would be a dark of night kind of thing if we did it tonight anyway, that we might be printing them on our own kind of thing and numbering them and going into a place in Akron where we could get those disseminated. We are not doing that. So those of you that have signed up or that were on the call today, thank you very much. We will be, from what I understand, I have very limited information at this point, but from what I understand, we will be starting to collect this weekend. So I, along with many of you, are disappointed that we did not have them during early voting. That would have been fantastic, especially in Akron and Cleveland when we had lines for an hour or more. It would have been great to get to those voters. That is not the case. But we will certainly have a lot of time. What we're looking for right now, which many of you know, is we're looking for that first 1,000 signatures. What that means is that we have enough to submit it to the AG's office. We are not being fooled to think that it will not be rejected, perhaps multiple times. And with that, then the 1,000 signatures get thrown out. Those people can then re-sign another petition when we get the ballot language to the place where the AG will accept it. So when we're looking, some people are saying, well, what's the, I got some questions on why just 1,000 and why we're working on that first 1,000. That was just so that we could submit the language to the AG's office. So we will be looking to do that. So any of you that are working the polls that couldn't gather signatures before, we will certainly be hitting up all of you as well. It's a really good segue into our discussion tonight, and we will be talking a little bit about our direction, and the board of directors, your board of directors, had a retreat in July where we discussed a lot of kind of where we've been, where we need to go, and what we're really looking at the next 2 years. So when we look down the road and when we're looking at 2024, we are not only looking at a redistricting ballot initiative, but we are also looking at a presidential election. We know that there are many voters across the United States, and especially in Portage County, that are only presidential voters. So we are going to see a lot more voters coming out next year that do not know about the voter ID laws. They do not know about the legislation that's come down. They do not understand, and when they get to the ballot or when they get to their polling place, they will be unable to vote. We want to make sure that that does not happen in Portage County. So regardless, we've always been that way, regardless of how they vote, we want to make sure that they have a free and fair election and that they are able to get to the polls as well as everyone else. So that is, when we're looking at the next 2 years, we know that it is going to be a fight. We've already been there. For those that were here in 2012, I was not. So I do not know that fight. I was not here in 2015 either, when it actually did pass, but I was here in 2018, and we know that left any sort of loophole, they'll find it. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen and that we pass this with a resounding number as we have in 2015 and 2018 when it passed by over 70%. So I don't know that we're going to see those numbers in light of the last couple of election cycles, but we can certainly strive for that. So I think it's really important. We started the meeting last month with this quote, and I think that this may become a theme, that we'll just start every meeting with the Margaret Mead quote, because we may be a small group. And even though we represent over 200 members within the Portage and Summit County, we are often a very small group of individuals here, and I think that we do make a difference. We do make a difference not only in Portage County, but in the surrounding counties as well. I had someone in Summit County that lives in one of our fellow league districts and said, I looked on there, I said, well, you understand that we have a league there, right? And she said, yes, but I looked on the website and you guys are so much more active and I'd really like to be a part of your group. So, kind of walk that tight line a little bit. So we are. So our reputation goes outside of Portage County to where people see the activity that we have. And so I think we should be very proud of that. So for those that may not have ever looked at the actual verbiage of our mission, this is on the League of Women Voters US main page. This is the very first thing that you see when you go to their page. And we also have this in the new member orientation, so those of you that have been through with me, you know that we go through this, and I think obviously the most important word up there is nonpartisan. So when we look at that nonpartisan, we also talk about a grassroots organization, but when we look at the two things that say protect and expand voting rights, when we look at the very foundation of our organization, we look at that idea that we protect voting rights and also also voter education. So when we're looking at that, we're looking at defend the democracy through advocacy, education, and litigation. So many of you might have seen that we have been questioned, especially at the local level. We've been questioned about our advocacy and the fact that we are a 501c3, okay? What it states is the money that you spend and the number of hours that you spend in advocacy. So people are questioning the fact that we've taken a position on issue 1, okay? The fact is, it addresses this very mission. We defend democracy, and currently we are defending the Constitution of Ohio, and therefore we are defending democracy. So while we have spent significant amount of money, we have not spent over our limit as a 501c3. And so we will continue to advocate for this. And if anyone saw the Portager today, Barb had a very nice reply to that and addressing that situation. I too have been asked and questioned about the idea that I thought we were nonpartisan, and I said we absolutely are. And this is a nonpartisan issue, and that is why 4 governors and all former AGs are supporting this as well. This is a nonpartisan issue. It is our democracy. So, with that in mind, talking a little bit about the history and where we are and how we've gotten to this place as a local league, and kind of where we go from here. So, of course, in 1920 and even prior to that, we were solely focused on the 19th Amendment. That was it. We were going for voting rights for women. Now we know that in 1920, not all women got the right to vote. White women got the right to vote. Women of color did not. So we continued that fight. But in the process, we were one of the only women organizations that were fighting for women's rights. We didn't have the NARALs and the Planned Parenthoods and the gun rights advocacies or gun safety advocates, and we didn't have those other groups, right? So we represented a lot of social justice issues because there wasn't anybody to really fight for child labor laws or Voting Rights Act or the ERA or even women's rights when we're talking about their rights in divorce. So we didn't have those organizations. So during that time, League acted on those and we took positions, right? Some of the positions that we have had have not changed for decades. So what did change is 2016. And it changed our culture. It changed the culture of the US. It certainly changed the culture in Portage County. And it changed the way that people view League of Women Voters. Okay? So we've taken a good hard look at what that does for us and against us. Okay? So we have been, at one time, we had a reputation then, and we have a reputation now. Then we were nonpartisan. We were almost Republican leaning. We were led originally by women, okay, way back in 1920, right, that were more conservative, which is why sometimes we get a bad rap because we were white women that got white women the right to vote. Okay, some people see our organization still to this day like that. Okay, we know that we are working and changing that culture. Okay, but that is not necessarily the view and what we're seeing in surveys and the reputation that we have. We had an open door to legislators. We could go down to the State House, we could knock on the door, we could walk in, we had an open door to them. We also, and at that time, we expanded our positions because we could, and because they weren't as polarizing as they are now. We have said at the bottom, issues are not partisan, candidates are partisan. But that is not the way that they are seen in today's culture. Today's culture, we are seeing that it doesn't matter, it's pro-life, it's pro-choice. It's pro-gun, it's anti-gun. There's no middle ground, there's no gray area, okay? We were seen as unbiased. It was one of the reasons that we were, for the many years, we were chosen to moderate the presidential debates. And when it became not nonpartisan, we said we're out, okay? However, because of some of the stands that we have taken over the course of our history, we are now seen as a partisan, left-leaning, social justice organization, and what it has done to us at the State House has closed a lot of doors. Where we also see that is locally, is our face-to-face. We have never had as much challenge getting Republicans to come to our face-to-face as we have the last since 2016. So we are seeing this as, and when we ask them, you know, why aren't you, they're like, you're a liberal organization, you're not our people, whatever the answer is, they do not see us as this nonpartisan organization. One of the challenges as well is when we go into redistricting. So when we go and we are working towards that redistricting, right, we need all of those players. We need the Betty Montgomerys, we need the Joan Lawrences, we need the Maureen O'Connors, we need those voices on the other side, right, of the issue, okay? We know that it is a nonpartisan issue. We know that Joan Lawrence, a member of Delaware County, you've heard me say it 1,000 times, she's 94 years old, and bless her heart, she's still fighting for redistricting, and she says, I may not live long enough to see what I legislated or what I tried to legislate in 1971. And she sat on the other aisle. She is a Republican representative from Delaware County because in the 70s, it was gerrymandered the other way. So she sees that. And, you know, Governor Kasich has said, this is one of the worst things that can happen to Ohio. We're not representing the citizens of Ohio. So these are all some of the challenges that we're facing as leagues. So again, we talked about the face-to-face. Access to legislators, for many of you that have been down at State House Day, it is a lot more challenging for us to get in to see Republican legislators. We have been known to be shut out of their offices down at the State House. And with the idea of you can come see me at office hours or whatever the case may be, wherever they kind of dismiss us to. Membership. When we look at our membership, we are a very Democrat or liberal-leaning organization. Right? When we look around, we do not see a lot of the Republican Party among us. So we often talk about our DEI, right? When we talk about DEI, we often think about the color of people's skin, or we'll talk about LGBTQ. But when we really look, we also, when we talk about diversifying, if we truly are a nonpartisan organization, the idea is to work towards at least that outreach to our Republican friends. So that's, you know, we see that. Donors. I can tell you, as many of you that may or may not know, you probably do because you've seen my name and the League of Women Voters of Ohio, but I am the development director for the League of Women Voters of Ohio, so I talk to donors a lot. And I hear from the donors that the reason that they donate to League of Women Voters is because of our voter advocacy. When we ask them what other organizations are you contributing, we hear Planned Parenthood, Sierra Club, you know, the Environmental Protection Agency, whatever, right? The national parks, those areas, they donate to us because of our voter advocacy. They donate to us because of our voter education. They donate to us because of Vote 411 and our voters guide and all of the things that make us the league that we have always been, is that educating voters on the issues from a unbiased, nonpartisan point of view. The resources, and this is on just the local level. So when we look at the resources that we have, not only financially, but also our human capital, okay? We have about a little over 200 members. When we look around this room, we see a lot of familiar faces. We see a lot of the faces that are here month after month, and a lot of you all are this is who we see at voter registration. This is who we see. So we have limited human capital when we're talking about addressing all of these issues, okay? So taking all of this right, is the challenges, and knowing where we've been, knowing the culture that we're in right now, and knowing what we're looking towards in the next 2 years, we looked at what we would like to see the direction for 2023 to 25. This isn't forever. This isn't forever. We hope, right? I think we're all hopeful that we will get back to a more civilized society, a more civilized discourse, that we will be able to talk about many of these issues in a bipartisan, nonpartisan way. Currently, that is not where we are. So what can we do as a league, and how can we address some of the challenges that we have, and yet still work towards what we know to be the very foundation of our democracy? And we are seeing that tomorrow, and we are seeing that in redistricting. Because without either one of those two, women's reproductive rights, gun safety, environmental, social justice, education, they don't exist. Because if we do not have fair representation at the State House, we know that none of those other issues that we are all so very passionate about matter. Because we'll never see them on the ballot, we will never see them at the legislature, and we will never have things passed again at the State House the more gerrymandered it becomes. So that being said, we looked at getting back to our roots. So putting all of our efforts and really kind of focusing and kind of redirecting, and again, at least for the next 2 years, on that idea that redistricting, voter education, and voter registration. Because we also know, as I stated in the beginning, that we have a lot of voters that are going to go to the polls and they're not going to be able to vote because they don't have the right ID, or they don't know when the polling hours are, or they're going to, or absentee ballots. Any of those issues, we have a lot of education to do between now and November 2024. We also know that redistricting is coming fast and it's coming hard. So in order for us to maximize our capital, human and financial, we need to look at increasing our member engagement. Last month was amazing. For those of you that were here, we had probably the biggest meeting that I think I've ever seen in my tenure here, and we had 65 people. We were outside, we were putting people wherever we could, and 1,700 postcards. And I don't even know, how many yard signs? Jill and Stacy, 90? 90?
Probably all together.
275.
275 and the yard, we are...
More than 20, there's 2,300 postcards have gone out from our league.
2,300 postcards from just our league. So a round of applause on that. So we know, again, going back to the very first quote, we know what a small group of people can do. 65 people, 1,700 postcards, that's all in a day's work. That's good stuff. So how can we increase that member engagement? And then how can we streamline the committee structure that we have? Not that any committee has not been important, not that it hasn't served us well, not that it can't in 2 years come back to the fold. But right now, when we're looking at the limited human capital and that limited financial capital that we also have, because we also know, for those of you that were at our annual meeting, we had to take from our reserves. We can't do that forever. We can't do that forever. We will not be an organization if that's the case. So we need to not only increase the engagement, but then to streamline the capital that we do have. So a little side note, and this to my stepmother, a little shout out. She was like, "Don't forget." Is that we did decide at positions and priorities, and then again reiterated at the annual meeting is that we will do a Kent charter review and study. Okay, so we are not skipping over that. We're not letting that go. That is not part of the conversation tonight because we're working again towards this more like the committee structure. But so we want you to know though that it is on our radar. We are going to get a study committee together sooner than later, because we know that that again is coming up, and that is in that 2-year period of time for us. Okay, so again, not that any of our committees, not any of the work, any that we've had, but what we're trying to do is then to bring some of those committees and kind of realign with where we're going in our committee structure. So I'm going to start passing these around. There are different ones. One said voter services, the other one says membership. So if you could take one and pass these around. So as they're coming around, taking a look at our committee structure. So again, we've had several committees that have addressed some of our positions, okay? What we're looking towards, again, is kind of just streamlining some of these committees. So you're going to see, like on voter services, we have the mention of DEI, we have mention of education. We have some of these committees that we've used in over the years. We're just kind of redirecting them and asking the question, in what way does this committee educate voters about elections, enhance democracy, or advocate for voter rights? So when we're talking about the committees and we're looking at what we do, will hopefully address that question. So looking at the voter services membership, communication, we will always need communication. And we have been very, very blessed to have several of our members, Katie, coming on to our social media as well, and really increasing our visual, awareness. And Amy has been amazing as always, year after year. She continues to get our message out there, and we continue to expand that communication. Friend and fundraising. And I will tell you, this is always, right? This is always the challenging part. I can tell you right now, because anytime you say fundraising, all eyes divert. Like nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to look at it. And when you say, with the whole, like fundraising, fundraising's first. So I do a whole presentation, which I've done at our different, at our state convention, about fundraising. Because without fundraising, we don't have fundraising. So we'll talk about that down the road, but I will tell you right now, that committee chair is up for grabs. Jane has very kindly offered somebody else the opportunity to become the chair of
I will help.
the said committee. And then we have the budget committee as well, because bless her heart, Nina Hankins has done it for years and years, and she also is opening the opportunity for someone to step into that role. So we're going to focus a lot really on the first two committees, because that's where our questions are going to come here when we break up. We're going to break up into small groups and kind of talk about this. But looking at the membership committee, one of the things that we see, again, and when before our retreat, I had the opportunity to meet with a lot of our board members. And I asked some questions as to what's your number one goal, or what would you like to see in the next 2 years? And almost to a person, somewhere in that discussion, did they say member engagement? That we'd like to see more members engaged in not only our activities, but also just in our events, in our member meetings. One of the things we talked about was what happens if we outgrow this space? What if we increase the attendance at our monthly meetings so much and we have action meetings that we outgrow this space? These are things, these are goals that we would like to actually achieve, right? That we would outgrow this space. It's wonderful and it's beautiful, and I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment here to stop and thank KSS, which we always do for this beautiful space. But wouldn't it be wonderful if we outgrew it? And so, looking at the idea that a chairperson, which may very well this year be a VP, because Janice is taking a really hard look at these and with the like all member meetings, but our whole social, we haven't done a lot of those social. Thank you, COVID, that we haven't had that opportunity, but we have done these in the past, and it's a wonderful opportunity for us to be with our members without an agenda, right? Without an agenda, without a program, without an activity, just to get to be with our fellow members and talk to them. Outreach. We have been so very blessed due to our reputation that we have done just about a zero recruitment. You all are our best recruiters. When almost to a person, when we get a new member in, I'll say, how did you hear about it? And it's somebody's name. Somebody's name, some member has told them about League and they've joined. So we have a great network of people, but it could be bigger. We know that there are others out there. We know that people want to make that difference. We know that they want to be engaged in the process. And we know that going into a presidential election, we certainly will see a lot more people that want to be involved in this. So how can we reach out to our members? How can we engage? This will be one of the questions here in a moment. And probably the biggest, I would say, the biggest kind of redirection, refocus, really is working towards that voter services committee. So the eyes on Jill and Stacy, when I put this up, were like, and I was like, no, it's not all under you. No. That this is like our umbrella. This is the umbrella of when we think about League, going back to that nonpartisan, grassroots organization with voter advocacy and education. This is where we are. We're looking at this as voter education and voter registration. Now, you could argue that those are the same things. We're educating when we're out registering voters, right? We are educating every time they see us. Kind of the difference is that when we talk about registration, we're looking at those like tabling events. We're looking at the place like Art in the Park and the Corn Festival and Heritage Fest and places like that where we have tables of information, and our goal is to register but also to educate voters. But when we look on this voter education side, we are going out, the idea with that is to go out with the specific reason, the specific agenda to educate voters and to engage the community. One of the things that we've talked about, and for those again that were at the annual meeting, Iris, when we were talking about DEI, Iris brought up a good point, and she said, look around the room. Look around the room. And where is our diversity? And sometimes we say, and I can tell you in the new member booklet that we have, we say that we go to Skills McElrath, because at some point we did. I can tell you that I've been in this organization 8 years, and I don't think I've ever seen an active drive or an active, like a organized event at Skills. It's not a pointing finger at anyone. We have so much, we are so busy, and we've had all of these different committees, that idea of let's bring it back and let's look at those organizations, let's look at those communities, and let's go to them. That outreach means reaching out to them, and that means going out to them. So it's one thing for us to say, okay, who's going to go to the NAACP breakfast? But who's going to sit down with the NAACP, and how can we be more involved with you? How can we build this relationship a little more? How can we build on that which we have already built such a beautiful foundation that they invited us to the rally, right? I mean, we have that relationship. How can we take it that step further? How can we be a part of them instead of asking them maybe to be a part of us? How can we educate the communities out there that may not be members? Maybe they're not members, but they need that information. They need registration. They need people to be out with them. So when we think about those community organizations, we have had that speakers bureau before, where we've gone out and we've identified people that can go out and talk to some of these organizations. We're going to need a lot more of those come redistricting. We're going to need some redistricting experts, right, to go out there, and you don't have to be an expert, but we know a lot about it, right? There are many in this room that have been through every single cycle of redistricting. So you know what we're up against, and those are the people that are out there. We need to be out there and sharing that story, especially going into 2024. The Observer Corps, Voter Girl, I mean, when we're talking about these places where we are going out, right, and we're talking to people, several of our board members are educators. And one of the things that they said is, we'd like to be out in the classrooms. We want to be talking to the high school students. We want to be talking to the college students, not just about registering them to vote, not just going in there just as one time. Yes, to be there, but how can we engage them more? How can we answer the questions, give them the information that they need? Ethan's nodding us out. He's like, yes. Because we know that voter registration at Kent State is hard. Because we know that they are going to move next year, and we're doing it all over again. But when we look at the citizens of Kent, let's talk about the turnout last election. Abysmal. Abysmal. And those are permanent residents. Those are permanent residents that we can go out to. We can get information to them. We know who they are. We can pull the voting records. We know, right? So when we're thinking about this, so we're going to break down into small groups, okay? And we've got some questions that we want all of you to think about, because you're in places in the community we're not. So there are going to be community groups. There are going to be maybe high schools. There are going to be Kent State organizations. We're looking at, when we talk about DEI and we talk about that outreach, is there a way that maybe what it looks like is we get together a group of diverse organizations and talk about how we can do events? Or maybe it is that they need something from us. But what we do know is that without a deeper relationship, especially in the communities of faith, when we think about the communities of faith and when we're thinking about areas in the county that maybe we don't touch, when's the last time that anybody's been to Palmyra? Edinburgh? Bridgetown? Right? I mean, we often, and I'm guilty. I'm gonna talk to the people in Kent because that's safe. I'm gonna and you know, when we were in Streetsboro, right, we weren't sometimes among friendlies. And that's okay. Because if we are really going to be that nonpartisan organization, we kind of need to open ourselves up to some of those organizations. So what we're asking all of you to do, because we don't want to do this in a vacuum, right? We don't want to do it in a vacuum. We know the challenges that we have, but we want to ask each of you, and as a small group, so we're thinking all these tables are kind of hard, so if we can split up into maybe find that 5 or 6 people and maybe even pull your chairs over to the corner. We're going to turn on all the fans now that I'm not talking, so it's not so hot. And to think about what communities or what organizations are appropriate / good for us to partner. Who are they? I mean, it makes a natural, now we think about it, we wouldn't even think twice, but who would have thought until John Graves said, why don't you partner with Girl Scouts? What a great opportunity that would be, and thus Voter Girl. Right? So who are those organizations? How about the LGBTQ community? What are some of those organizations? What about the communities of faith? Are there organizations in some of these more rural areas that might be good for us to contact? And do you have contacts in them? And if you do, those would be great contacts for us to have and to partner with you to reach out to them. What events could we add to our voter registration calendar? Now, to the voters, Jill's like, the answer better be none. It better be none. Unless you're going to staff it, none. So, but it also then lends itself to that very next question as to what are best practices for us to engage members. Because it is, when we are looking at tabling events, when we are looking at honkin' waves, when we are looking at all of these events, they're amazing if we have people to staff them. So how can we get some of those people that we don't see in this room? So that kind of goes to that membership. So we're looking at both of these voter services and then the membership of the committees when we're talking about this, and opening this up then to all of you. And if you would please appoint a reporter, and I do have paper up here if somebody needs paper to record for your group. But if you could get in groups of, you know, maybe 5 or 6, maybe pulling the chairs aside and asking and talking about these questions and kind of bring